How to overcome grief. This is the series From Grief to Struggle. Hello, welcome. It's a joy and honor to have you here. I am Dr. Felipe Batistela, a psychiatrist in the field. Have you ever experienced or do you know someone who has experienced a feeling of grief, a great loss, someone you loved ended up dying? Or rather, I hope you haven't gone through it, but sometimes you know someone, and even if you don't, you feel ready to console a friend or a family member who has just lost someone very dear. This feeling of grief is inevitable. Everyone will go through it one day. And if you have gone through it or sometimes still feel it too much, it seems like your life ended after someone you love dearly is gone. So, subscribe to the channel now because we are going to start a series on how to overcome grief. It's the series From Grief to Strength, how to move forward, how to learn to console, how to feel consoled, how to deal with that fear, with that insecurity. What will become of my life now? My father, my mother, my husband, my wife, they were my foundation, and now what do? Doctor, you don't know, but I lost my little child. Isn't this wrong for the younger one to pass away? How do we deal with these various situations? And you will also understand that grief doesn't only occur when someone passes away. Great disappointments can create in your mind a phase of grief, of extreme sadness. Imagine the impact of grief from a betrayal, from a great slander by someone you trusted, who slandered you. They deceived you, betrayed your trust, exposed something very intimate of yours. The grief from losing a great job, from not getting into a university, a course, or a long-dreamed competition. This does indeed create a phase of grief, and if you don't learn to deal with it, there is a very, very high risk of this grief becoming pathological or evolving into a depressive state or post-traumatic stress. Does that make sense? So, again, go ahead, hit the like button here, right? And share this video with others. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe, because what you will learn here is not taught in clinics. Unfortunately, this is not talked about. And these are tools that make all the difference for you to get through this dark phase that sooner or later someone will end up going through here on earth. Some people say, oh, Dr. Goodness, don't even talk about this subject. It's even better if you're not going through this, because then your mind will be even more neutral to learn this. But if it's your case that you're currently experiencing a moment of grief, what you will hear here will transform your life. It will bring you hope, a little light at the end of the tunnel, and you will learn to honor the memory of that dear person who, unfortunately, is no longer alive near you. But you guys, you who are in medicine, you think these things can be studied in books and that science is too cold to deal with this. I am a psychiatrist, but I learned to deal with grief in the worst possible way. What I am going to teach you, I teach to many of my patients in the office. Even before I graduated in Crillon as a doctor, in 2010, I was in the middle of college and a great tragedy happened in my life. My father was killed. He didn't die. He wasn't sick. I received a call from friends saying, pack your bags now because someone will come by to pick you up at your building and take you to the countryside of Sao Paulo. At that moment I asked, "But what happened?" "Ah, your father is not well." And I asked, "Is he still alive?" Because in my mind, I was wondering if I would at least have time to say goodbye. Because it's terrible when someone dies, but it's even more terrible when you don't even have time to say goodbye to the person. At that moment, my friends preferred not to tell me. They only told me when we arrived in the small town where my father was going to be laid to rest, and I found out that Gentil de Oliveira, my beloved father, had been killed there in Mato Grosso. He ended up being the target of an ambush. Some criminals, some petty criminals, found out that he was carrying something of value which wasn't even that valuable. But anyway, they stopped his car, put him in a chokehold. He fell, hit his head, and then they took him to the middle of the soybean field to finish him off with bladed weapons and left him there. I went through something terrible. Fortunately, maybe if this hadn't happened, if one of the girlfriends of the criminals who saw it happening hadn't become distressed and called the police, and if the police hadn't managed to catch those guys, those criminals, and then gone there to find where my father's body was hidden, maybe I would never have been able to give my father a proper burial. Maybe I would have lived with that feeling that at any moment he would appear and I would realize it was all a misunderstanding. But I had this painful opportunity for my father to be found, to be taken to the countryside of Sao Paulo and to be buried. It was very sad because he was not only the financial support that kept me in college, but he was a spiritual foundation of faith for me. He was a source of advice. I could be at ease. I just had to study, and that was enough. Because I knew I could count on my father. And suddenly, he was no longer there. I had to, as the son. I have a sister. It was terrible. The funeral was too sad. Sad. But a few days later, I had to take the bus, travel all the way to Mato Grosso to give a statement, to listen to statements, to retrieve his car that had been stolen by the criminals. I went to the police station, talked to the chief, had to go to the banks where I had accounts to close them, to cancel the checks. Terrible things. So barely had I gone through that pain, I already had to face it and resolve a lot of things. My uncle accompanied me. My beloved Uncle Alcides was with me. And many people were praying, and I am sure that God gave me strength. It was very difficult. In the middle of the trip, just to give you an idea, I was traveling on the bus, and there was a person who got up, ran to the bathroom, didn't make it in time, and ended up vomiting, and all that vomit came onto me. In my mind, I thought, what a horrible thing I'm going through. Besides losing a loved one, the barely having time to bury this person, and already traveling, I'm here all covered in vomit, going after the car where my father was killed. I had to drive that car, talk to authorities. And I was only in my early 20s at the time. I remember that when I managed to resolve that, I was able to talk to the guy who leased our farm because I kept thinking, will I have the financial means to finish medical school after this? How am I going to fulfill my father's dream. Mine was to graduate as a doctor, but what about now? Then I managed to have a conversation there. God blessed, I leased the land. Later, God prepared another person to lease it, and it was enough. My dear mother, my sister, they, with a little bit of the money that was left over from the income from the property we had, they left it with me so I could finish my studies, and it wasn't too much. No, it was just enough in the account. There were times when I knew that if I had lunch at a steakhouse, ate better. To make the money last and not run out by the end of the month, I would have to eat instant noodles at night for another 2 or 3 days. And here I am, alive. People thought I wouldn't be able to handle it, that I would get sick. On the way back, when I went to Mato Grosso, I realized that I couldn't return to Curitiba to finish my studies. I just wanted to go back to college, and when I arrived, I had such a severe stomachache. I psychosomatized. Sometimes great losses happen. Because, yes, God gave me such great strength to face that week of chaos, the worst week of my life. But the moment I arrived at the little apartment where I lived to attend college, my stomach reacted immediately. I psychosomatized all that repressed pain. It went to my stomach. I couldn't eat anything. I went a few days without being able to, until a friend said, "Felipe, how are you doing and all?" I said, "Take me to eat some soup for God's sake, because I can't eat anything. I'm getting weak." So I went through a terrible morning. And then I almost started to get depressed, because what am I going to do now? What is the meaning of this? Some bills, some debts of my father, creditors calling, "Listen, aren't you going to pay?" The farm was even seized because of Madivo. And I remember that when I was in class, whenever my phone rang, I would get palpitations because I didn't know what was going to happen, what was the problem this time. How did you, Dr. Felipe, manage to get through this? So I usually say that I learned not from books what I'm going to teach you here. It wasn't from books. In reality, later when I went into the field of psychiatry, I understood that I did what was right without anyone knowing. I don't know if you are a person of faith. I am. I believe that the Holy Spirit, that God guided me to understand what was happening. But so many times I felt a longing, even today I do. But understand that when you're going through a mourning, when someone, especially in matters of death, when someone has died, you enter an area that is the pain of loss. And this pain of loss, it is terrible. It hurts. But if you do the right things, this pain of loss, it will gradually decrease to the level of the pain of longing. And if you continue living your life in the way I'm going to teach you, from the pain of longing, it will move to the level of longing, which sometimes hurts, but most of the time it stays at the level of nostalgia, where you remember, sometimes even shed a tear, but you know that you're on the right path. For a few days after the loss, during that time of the pain of loss, I didn't sleep well. If there's something wrong that you shouldn't do and shouldn't let happen to you, it's when you have a great loss and you end up not sleeping, what will someone do? They'll want to give you a black label medication, a sedative black label. Don't take it. There are already scientific studies that say if there's a time in a person's life when it's healthy to have insomnia, it's in the first or second week after a great loss. Because if you take a black label medication, what will happen? Oh, but the person is feeling unwell. This pain needs to be endured. It needs to be endured. Because if you take a black label medication, of course, if you are already using these black label medications, this is not the time for you to stop. But you also shouldn't increase the dose. If you don't take it, don't use it. If you use a black label medication during the peak of grief, your mind will repress it, and it will greatly increase the risk of developing post-traumatic stress disorder after a month or two, where you will have flashbacks of the event. Very vivid memories, as if it had just happened. You will have a reliving, a painful recollection of the events. You will have adrenergic signs, many triggers that will cause palpitations, chest pain, shortness of breath, hot flashes, chills. The flashbacks will become increasingly real, so do not use black label medication when you go through a major loss. Oh, but it's not right for a person to suffer like that and all. The suffering has to come, the pain has to be released, because if you suppress it, it might explode later in the worst possible way. Whether in post-traumatic stress, a syndrome, a panic disorder, or depression. And doctor, now it's complicated because I've already taken these things. And now, seek psychiatric care. Look for good psychological care, because you'll have to gradually remove this. You'll have to gradually remove this black label medication, as the professional attending to you addresses the consequences of this grief that was suppressed by the incorrect use of medication. On the day it happened with my father, they wanted to give me a medication I was unaware of. I said, no. No, it's for you to sleep so you don't suffer. No. But a shared pain hurts less. You will have to go through this suffering. You can't suppress it, but you don't have to go through it alone. You don't have to. Or those close to you don't have to go through it alone. Then people tell me, but what am I going to say then? And wow, I would hear all sorts of things when people approached me. My condolences, my sympathies, and so on. And so, these are the words, the trivial wishes that are spoken daily. But know this, more important than what you hear from someone or what you are going to say to someone who has just lost a loved one, is having this available to the person. What do you mean by a shoulder? A friendly shoulder for the person to cry on. So, rather than saying my condolences, you should say, look, I don't know what you're feeling. I don't know what you're feeling, but I just want you to be sure that you're not alone. I will be here to help you. Count on me. It's much better to say this than to say my condolences, and so on. Even if it's someone who isn't that close, and so on. My sympathies is much better than my condolences or my condolences. And be careful when consoling someone, because my goodness, it was the best for him. How was it the best? How is it that the best thing is when you're feeling bad? The best thing that happened to your father, your son, your mother, your husband, your wife was to die. Guys, it's not the time to talk about what was better or say, this will pass. No. So don't try to console in the wrong way. But I also had a great loss. I've been through that. It's not the time to say this to someone who is suffering the acute pain of loss, the acute pain of mourning, especially because we don't compare pain. Oh, I suffered so much when my grandpa died at 80, my grandma, and it doesn't compare. Oh, but I lost a child, it's much worse. There is no such thing as comparison, because sometimes the pain of loss for someone who lost an elderly person of 100 years, the way this person's brain interprets this loss can be extremely intense, harmful, and be greater than someone who lost a 4-year-old, 5-year-old child drowned. We don't compare. From this first lesson of our series, from mourning to fighting, keep this in your mind. It's not time for any comparison. None of that talk like, oh, it was the best for him. Oh, God knows what he's doing. Guys, I agree today that God knows what he's doing, that we have no idea what could have happened if the person were alive or not. I understand that, okay? I understand. But it was terrible to hear that my dear father, yes, dead, in a coffin, in an extremely serious way, cold-blooded. God knows what he's doing. You can even disrupt a person's faith if you keep saying that to them in this fragile moment. They are in what to do. Don't take strong medication. Don't take the strong medication that you don't use regularly. No, don't take that to dope yourself. Also, I don't even see the burial happen. It's important to be there. But don't go alone. And if you have to console someone, well, you already know what you're going to say. Look, my condolences. I can't even imagine the pain you're going through right now. What I want you to be sure of is one thing: you are not alone. You are not alone. Hug the person. If it's someone who is not so close to you, say, my condolences. It's terrible what happened. Terrible. But we are here. If you need anything, we will ask God to help you get through this phase, to comfort your heart. All right? Don't use strong medication. Know what to say. And if you are the one going through a pain like this, a pain of mourning, know who to choose to be by your side. Sometimes the closest person is not the wisest to be by your side. So it's not wrong to ask, hey, call brother, so-and-so, sister, such and such, my friend so-and-so, call this person, because it's not always your father, your mother, your wife, your husband, your child. It's not always that person who will know how to comfort you. And another thing, sometimes that person is also suffering to the point of not being able to comfort you. They need to be comforted too. So it's important for you to choose to ask for help. And if this act, this gesture of humility will help you, to ask for help from a wiser person, to be near you during all the hours of the funeral vigil, the service, the religious ceremony that takes place, to walk by your side or be with you in the car until you get to the cemetery, to be by your side until the moment you see the coffin being lowered and you say the final goodbye. Have someone suitable, inspired, wise to be by your side. It's not wrong to ask for help. It's not wrong. Oh, but I don't even want to know. I didn't even go to the cemetery. You will. There's in this series, from mourning to fighting, you will understand that this process of the farewell at the cemetery is important. Even if you didn't do it, there's a way to fix what didn't happen. And there are people who even went there but couldn't make that moment a full stop in the story you had with the person who passed away. Then if you don't learn to put a full stop, to turn the page and start writing, in the book of your life, a different story The teachings of those who have left, but a different story. What should have been a full stop turns into an ellipsis, and your life becomes mournful for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as I have already attended to people for 30, 40 years. Doctor, it seems that after so-and-so died, my father, my mother, it feels like I died along with them. It seems like I can't be happy. And moving forward doesn't mean you're betraying the person who died. Or do you think that the person who died would like you to have died more than they did, become a living dead, a zombie? We, in quotes, betray, dishonor those who have left when you become more dead than the person themselves. What do you mean more dead than the person themselves? The person at least truly died? You who sometimes will become or have already become a living dead. Because the legacy of those who have passed sometimes lives on in the memory of many people. But if you stop living your life, you don't stop your legacy, and you start to dishonor those who were by your side, who shared incredible moments with you. Don't do that. And it seems that the chaos has already happened. And now, what do I do? But how am I going to start living again? How am I going to do that? Yeah, and for those who will, people, there are all kinds of questions, things you shouldn't say. Wow, what's going to happen to you now? Oh, poor thing, how is it going to end? His father's dream was to study medicine. Oh, and now, how is it going to be, huh? Oh, yeah, the question, of course, it doesn't bring more problems to the mind of someone who, for God's sake, already has too many problems happening. Oh, who's going to get the assets now? How is the inheritance going to be divided? People, learn this. There are people who are very clueless. Very clueless. There are people who take pleasure in other people's pain. And there are people who are just clueless. Curiosity. Oh, really? Your father and mother died. Your child, how was it? How many days were they hospitalized? And then, how do you manage? And so on. And these people, they keep bothering you. And who's going to keep his clothes and so on? Is it right to keep the person's clothes? And how many objects? How do you handle that? How do you go back and see that little room organized, see the belongings of the person you loved there? Yeah, what do you do? Do you donate everything or not? That's exactly what we're going to talk about in our next video. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Share this video. Join me in this series from grief to fight, so you don't get down. It's so you don't lose the battle of grief, and learn to overcome, to fight, to win your life. Subscribe here now. Spread this knowledge to others, and in the next video I'll teach you how to deal with wrong comments, how to handle the things left behind by the person. So I'll see you in the next video.